I'm excited to be here. We're in an exciting season, a season full of transitions. Y'all can sit down. I know you want to. A season full of transitions, and we're walking into a new season. And we've got lots of olds and news and first and last. Like it's our last Sunday in this building. It's my last semester of college. Thank the Lord. Yeah, guys, I'm so ready to be done. It's still November. Yeah, it's the last November of this decade. Yeah, that's one. We're going into a new season, into our new building. It's the last of our season new. Yeah, see what we did there? And guys, we're walking into a new building tomorrow. So next week, tomorrow, whenever you want. So it's just an exciting time of olds and news and first and new engagements. Guys, give Sam and Michaela a hand. They got engaged last weekend. Yes, so just an exciting time. And so my title tonight, as we go into the last week of our series, New, is His Presence. I'm going to keep it closer to my mouth, Aaron. His presence changes our appearance. Aaron told me that the mic, I kept keeping it too far away, so I'm going to do a better job of keeping it close. Yeah, I see you back there. So my title for tonight is His Presence Changes Our Appearance. How many of us know that? That the more time that we spend with the Lord, the more He begins to change us. And so I want to look at the Israelites and Moses in Exodus chapter 32 and pull out 3 ways that we commonly are kept from being in the presence of the Lord. And so the first one is with idols. And so opening up into Exodus chapter 32, you'll find Moses is on the mountain with God. And he's spending quite a bit of time on the mountain with God. He was like 12 or so chapters, just the Lord pouring into him. And he's getting the tablets, which are the 10 Commandments from God. And so Moses is up on the mountain for a long time. And God tells Moses, hey, Moses, your people are rebelling. Your people are worshiping false gods. It may be one of the 10 Commandments to have no other God but me, maybe possibly the first one. And so God tells Moses, go down to the bottom of the mountain, handle it. So Moses is a smart guy. He listens to God and he goes down to the bottom of the mountain. And it picks up in Exodus chapter 32, verse 19. And it says, and as soon as he came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, Moses' anger burned hot. And he threw the tablets out of his hand and broke them at the foot of the mountain. And so I just want to pause right there real quick and look at Moses' response. He immediately saw the idol and immediately took action. He did not wait. He did not hesitate. And my question is, what does our reaction look like when we realize that we have an idol in our life? Do we hesitate or do we immediately take action? And so verse 20 says, and he took the calf that they had made and burned it with fire and ground it to the powder. Ground it to powder and scattered it on the water. I got you, Aaron. And made the people of Israel drink it. So he took the calf they had made and burned it with fire and ground it to a powder and scattered it on the water, and the people of Israel drank it. And so Moses immediately destroys the idol. Unlike IHOP waiters who like to take our orders and then they like to go and sit in the back possibly for an hour and then place the order, and then we get our food back about an hour and a half later. So my question is our response to idols in our life, like an IHOP waiter, just a little slow to making a change, or we like Moses and we immediately take action? And so I think we can also read this passage and we can say, well, it's a physical idol, it's a physical image. I don't have any physical images in my house, in my life. But I do have a physical image, a physical idol in my house. Yes, it's quite controversial. And this physical image that I have in my house, it's actually like forced on by my mother. She loves to cook. She loves to be in the kitchen, and so she likes to design kitchens for people. Like set up, the drawers and the right drawer with the silverware and the right drawer with the spatulas and all that stuff. So she likes to like lay out the kitchens. And so the signature touch of a Kelly McAndrew kitchen is this rooster. And so Kelly McAndrew in every single kitchen, I'm sorry, it got underneath your chair, is she likes to put a rooster in every single kitchen that she designs, every single kitchen that she builds. And so I do have a physical idol in my house, and I've tried to get rid of it before, not gonna lie. I've taken the rooster and I've put it into a cabinet, and my mom came over to my house, and she saw clearly that there was no rooster. And her immediate reaction was she went to Benja, and she goes, Benja, where's the rooster? Did somebody take it? Did Michael hide it? Where is it at? And Benja was like, I don't know. It might be in the cabinet. In the cabinet? Yeah, it might be in the cabinet, but I don't know. I got to go, Mrs. McAndrew. I got to go to work. And he leaves because he does not want the confrontation. And so I feel like a lot of the times, my mom, she's intimidating. If she gets, watch out for her. I know she's not here right now, so I can talk bad about her. But hey, she was here. She was in the 5. But really, though, she gets intimidating, right? She'll get in your face. And so I feel like a lot of the times we don't have idols, physical idols in our lives, but we do have idols of the heart. Whether it be social media, or maybe it's fashion, or maybe it's your yard, or quite possibly your job, and just having to get to the next spot in the job and the next spot in the promotion and continuing to move up. And so our idols today look different, but the principle is still the same. I got you, Aaron. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it, Aaron. And so the idols, they look different today. I know. Hey, I want it so far out. Sorry. And so Moses destroys the idol. In order to be in his presence, we must rid ourselves of idols. And I want to be careful not to idolize a certain place or a certain process, because that's what can keep us from being in the presence of the Lord as well. That brings me to my second point that we'll find in Exodus chapter 33, which is that we must not confine God to a certain place or a certain process. In Exodus chapter 33, we find Moses, and the title of the section is the tent of meeting. And so basically what the tent of meeting is Moses has the Israel camped out, and Moses has this tent outside of Israel, outside of the camp. And Moses likes to go to the tent, and that's where he meets with God. And so when Moses goes to the tent, the pillar of the cloud comes and it covers the front door, and that's where the presence of God is. And it tells us that everybody else in Israel goes to their front doorstep of their tent, and they look at Moses' tent. And it says in Exodus chapter 33, verse 7, everyone who sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting. And so I want to point out that God's presence was in the tent. And I want to ask you, do you confine God's presence to a certain place or a certain process? Do you confine him to the 4 walls of this church, this physical church? Do you confine the presence of the Lord to our worship team? Is the only time that you can be in the presence of the Lord while in worship is while we have an entire full worship team up here? Or do you rely on somebody that's on a stage teaching and preaching you in order to bring you into the presence of the Lord? I know that in Acts chapter 2, this is right before Pentecost, and it says in Acts chapter 2, and it says, and they were filled with the Holy Spirit. And this is when the Holy Spirit fell onto the disciples and fell onto the believers. And so I know for a fact that the presence of the Lord is not confined by 4 walls, but we have the presence of the Lord inside of us. And so my question is, are you confining the Lord to a certain place or a certain process? Because I love our church, I love our pastors, I love our worship team, wherever y'all are, Benja's over there. But your relationship with the Lord will never go further and never go deeper if you rely on somebody else for your time in the presence of the Lord. So it was in Moses' private time with God that he made this request. In Exodus chapter 33, verse 18, he says, please show me your glory. What do you ask God for in your private time? Is your request, God, show me your glory? Or do you even have private time with the Lord besides at church? And so God called Moses from the camp, and he called him up onto the mountain a second time. And that's what gets us into the third point. Second time, third point. And in the third way in which we are kept from being in the presence of the Lord is by our old routines. And so in Exodus chapter 34, the Lord says to Moses, it says, cut for yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. Be ready by morning and come up in the morning to Mount Sinai. And so I was on a run the first time that I realized this, and I was listening to chapter 32, 33, and 34, getting ready for this message. And I realized that the promises of God never changes, but sometimes the process does. Because if you wait for a second and you read it, the first time Moses was supplied with the tablets. God gave Moses the tablets. They were already there. They were already ready for him. But the second time, God tells Moses, Moses, take 2 tablets like the first, cut for yourself them, and bring them up onto the mountain. And so my question is, has God promised you something? Has God laid a vision on your heart? Has God shown you a way to reach your community? And maybe God took you up onto the mountain and God gave you the tablets and he showed you the process and he gave you the promise. And then you came back down the mountain the first time and something of your flesh distracted you. And so now the flesh got the best of you and you're off track. And so my question is, are you expecting God to take you back up onto the mountain, supply you with the tablets, and bring you back down in the same way that he did the first time? Or are you expecting God to meet you just because you follow through on the same old routines? Maybe you're saying to yourself, well, I used to come to church once a week and I would listen to the message and I felt filled for the rest of the week. Or I used to listen to worship music once a week in my car and I used to feel filled for the rest of the week. But maybe God is saying, that was powerful then, but now it's time for your routine to change. Maybe God's ready for something more. And so there's this pastor, there's this writer named Mark Batterson. I absolutely love Mark Batterson. He's a pastor of a church in Washington, D.C. He also writes a lot of books. And so in all of his books, he says similar things like how we talk. We say similar things. We have similar routines. And he says this: routines are normal, natural, healthy things. Spiritual disciplines are routines. That's a good thing. But once routines become routine, you need to change your routine. So I'll say it again. But once routine becomes routine, you need to change up your routine. And so maybe you do need to change up your routine. And this is what I know. I know that the promises of God never changes, but sometimes the process does. My question is, are you willing to cut the stone yourself and head back up onto the mountain? Or are you waiting for God to do the part that he already showed you how to do? Maybe God took you up onto the mountain, he showed you what true worship looks like. But then you came back down and you let your flesh get the best of you. So oftentimes our routines can keep us from being in the presence of the Lord. I wrote this down, and I want to say it so right that I'm just going to read it. I'm going to read it straight to you. It says, when our meeting with God is about his promises and his presence and isn't about our routines or our process, that's when our appearance begins to change. We won't have to act as though God is doing something or act like we're being changed. God actually continues to change who we are. And so in Exodus chapter 34, it's the title of the section is The Shining. In Exodus chapter 34, God calls Moses back up onto the mountain for the second time with the tablets. And so Moses has been on the mountain now for 40 days and 40 nights. And he's been fasting and praying for 40 days and 40 nights. And we pick up in verse 29 through 30, and it says, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, as he came down from the mountain, Moses did not know that his skin shone because he had been talking with God. Aaron and all of the people of Israel saw Moses, and behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come near him. And so Moses was spending time in the presence of the Lord. Moses spent 40 days and 40 nights fasting and praying and being in the presence of the Lord, and his appearance changed. Moses' physical appearance changed. Typically, our spiritual appearance changes. And so Moses came back down onto the mountain, and Moses had no idea that he had changed. As far as Moses was concerned, it was the new norm. It was who he is. It's his new flesh. And so when Moses was in the presence of the Lord, when we spend time in the presence of the Lord, our appearance begins to change. And so there's this exercise that I like to do to be in the presence of the Lord. And I feel like so many times we have so many distractions going on in our lives, whether it's just we get in the car and there's music, or we get home and we've got Netflix, or we read a book. It's probably better than watching Netflix. Or we go out to the movies and we're just constantly filling our life with noise, always. And so I like to find an hour of time to get rid of all of the distractions. So 1 hour, I don't answer phone calls. I don't respond to text messages. I don't read any books. I don't listen to any music, nothing. I have my phone on me so I can write down what the Lord speaks to me. But besides that, I'm just sitting and lingering in the presence of the Lord. And I'm asking the Lord, Lord, teach me something. Lord, reveal yourself to me. Lord, Lord, Lord. And I'm asking him to do this. And so I found myself in California. Mac and I were at a conference for church planters, and Mac left for a breakout session for lead pastors and senior pastors, and I'm not one of those. So I stayed at the little motel by myself, and I realized I've got 30 minutes to kill. I'm gonna go be in the presence of the Lord. I may have just finished watching a movie, no lies, but I finished watching this movie and I still had 30 minutes and I wanted to be in the presence of the Lord. So I came kind of prepared to California. I brought a bathing suit and that was it. I didn't bring an extra shirt to wear to the beach. I didn't bring any shoes or flip-flops or sandals or whatever you want to call them, Tevas. Typically I wear Tevas. I'm not a Chaco guy, I'm a Teva guy. I didn't bring anything. I wasn't ready for the beach. And so no sunscreen either, which I'm pretty tan, so most of the time I don't have to worry about that. But I said I have 30 minutes. And so I walked down to the bottom of the motel, it's a motel, let's clarify. And they've got chairs sitting out. And so I am shoeless and shirtless, looking for a chair. I find the least wet chair because they're all soaking wet. And I take this chair, I throw it over my shoulder, and I walk across Balboa Avenue, shirtless and shoeless with a chair over my shoulder, looking like a crazy guy going to the beach. I plop my chair down on the beach, and I just sit there. And so I start sitting in this chair for 30 minutes, and I'm asking the Lord, no distractions. I've got no music, no book, no nothing. My phone's on Do Not Disturb. I'm not looking at social media. I'm not doing anything for work. I'm not responding to phone calls. Maybe it's on Do Not Disturb. Maybe it's on airplane mode. And I'm just asking the Lord, Lord, reveal yourself to me. Lord, speak to me. Lord, teach me something. And so I get about 30 minutes in, and the Lord just says, my presence is a lot like the sun. I say, okay, come on, teach me more. And so I push it 30 more minutes. And so now I've been on the beach for an hour. And so the Lord just continues to speak and continues to speak. And I stay another 30 minutes. And so now I've been on the beach for an hour and a half, no sunscreen, no nothing, just sitting on the beach and the Lord's just teaching me and I'm sitting in the sun. And I've been on the beach for an hour and a half. I gotta go. I've got dinner, I've gotta take a shower, hop in an Uber and go to dinner. And so I'm just like, Lord, I gotta go. And so I pick up my chair, I walk across Balboa again, shirtless and shoeless, looking like maybe like a crazy homeless man. And I get to the dinner and everybody says, whew, you are burnt. You are red, you look like a lobster, all of the things. You know all that. What's your thing? What's your thing that you say, Chandler, when you see a sunburnt person? You sat out in the sun too long. All of those things that these caring senior pastors were telling me. And I was like, no, I'm good, I'm fine. And so we do this dinner and we go to bed that night and I wake up the next morning and I hop in the shower. And you know the showers that you take when you're sunburned and they like hurt? When the water's just like, oh, what is going on? I had one of those showers, which is terrible. But we spend the rest of the day in California and I get home and I walk into the house. And if you're walking into my house with me, on the left-hand side, I've got the dinner table and Benja is sitting where Clark's at. And he's doing the good boyfriend thing. He's FaceTiming Alyssa, his girlfriend. I say, hi, Alyssa. And I go, I'm just walking through my house right now. I go and I let my bags down in my bedroom and I come back and I start making a chocolate shake in the kitchen. That's what I do. Almost every night I make a chocolate shake. Just letting you know, Bluebell ice cream, take it, scoop it, put it in the cup. Hershey's chocolate syrup, you gotta put it in the cup. And then also 2% milk and mix it up. It is, I tell you what, it is a blessing, I will tell you that. So I'm making my chocolate shake and Alyssa goes, did you learn anything? And I said, I did actually. She goes, okay, what'd you learn? And I said, the presence of the Lord is a lot like the sun. And so I start to tell Alyssa and Benja that the presence of the Lord is a lot like the sun. And I was saying that I was sitting on the beach and God just kind of revealed it to me that we know that the sun is real. It rises in the east, and sets in the west. They had to teach me last in the 5 which way it rose and set, but it rises in the east and sets in the west. We know that the sun emits light. We know that it produces heat. We know all these things. Just like that we know God's real. We know that he has a son, that he lived a perfect life, that he died on a cross for you and me, and we know that God is present and that his presence is present. And so a lot of the times we live our day-to-day lives running. We wake up, we get the kids ready for school, we take them to school, we go to work, we are at work, we eat lunch, we come home from work, we pick up the kids, we do their homework, we put them in bed, and the day's over. Or we wake up, we run to class, we finish class, we go to work, we eat lunch, we go back to work, we get back to school, we do homework, we hang out with the friends, we go to young adults every first Friday of every month, and then we go home and the day's over. And so the Lord's just kind of speaking to me that my presence is a lot like the sun. My presence is a lot like the sun. And so as I'm sitting on the beach, I can feel the sun radiating. I can feel like the sun, it's got a pulse. Like if you're sitting and you have no distractions, and this is how I'm sitting on the beach. And I'm sitting on the beach and I can feel the sun just pulsing. And it hits me that in the same way that we run from our day-to-day lives and we can't feel the sun, when we slow down and we linger in the sun, we can feel it. And it's the same thing in our spiritual relationship with God. When we're running from place to place, from thing to thing, from job to job, from social media to social media, we can't feel his presence. And it's not until we sit and we linger and we sit still that we can feel his presence. And so I get to that point and I'm telling Alyssa and Benja the story, and I said, but here's the thing. I said, just like in the same way that the more time that we spend in the sun, it starts to have a change on us. The more time that we spend with the Lord, it starts to have a change on us. Because here's the deal. The more time that we spend in the sun, the more burnt we get. And if we're spending so much time in the sun that we just keep getting burnt, our old self is gonna fall off. Our old self is gonna die. And it's the same thing with our relationship with the Lord. The more time that you spend with the Lord, the more you're gonna change. The more that you're gonna have a new appearance. Because when we spend time in the presence of the Lord, our appearance changes. And so I said, and I'm yelling at this point at Benja and Alyssa, and I said, so my question is, are you spending time with the Lord so that you look tan? Are you spending just enough time in the presence of the Lord so it looks like you're spending time in the presence of the Lord, so you have the right answers to say, but you don't actually want the life change? And so my question is, are you spending so much time in the presence of the Lord that you're not worried about the skin cancer, that you're not worried about being burnt, that you're not worried about peeling, or are you only spending enough time with the Lord so that you look tan? And I was like, whew, okay, Lord, thank you. And so really, that's my question. One, are you spending any time in the presence of the Lord? Two, is the time that you're spending in the presence of the Lord just so that you look tan, just so people see that they can say they see the change, but you know that there's no real life change? Or are you spending so much time in the presence of the Lord that you're dying to your old self, that your old skin is falling off, that the old habits are breaking away, and that it's just your new self? And so as the band comes up, I wanna say this. Pastor Joe, he was here in the last experience, and he comes up and he kind of steals the mic a little bit, and he goes, I'm a pastor, so I always have something to say. And so Pastor Joe says, Michael, that was good, but I don't want us to forget that the more time that we spend in the presence of the Lord, the more that our outlook on everything else changes as well. So it's not just us that changes, but the way that we see the things going on around us changes as well. So what's keeping you from being in the presence of the Lord? Is it an idol? Is it social media? Is it your yard? Is it your fashion? Is it your job? Are you confining God to a certain place? Do you believe the lie that you can only experience God at this building? That you can only experience him when Mickey and Mallory and Keely Clips? Go follow her on Instagram, Keely Clips. It's not her Instagram handle, but when we're surrounded by an entire worship team, are our old routines keeping us from being in the presence of the Lord? And so, as we close, as we respond to our worship song, Presence, before we enter into this new season, before we move into the new building, I want you to respond and ask the Lord, what is keeping me from being in your presence? Lord, is it the idols? Am I confining you, or is it my routines? And don't leave this place until you figure out what is keeping you from being in the presence of the Lord more. So ask him, show me your glory, God.